So in the past 7 years at Curated, we've had the opportunity to probably buy some of the most incredible supercars in the world. And I would say that I never really get jaded. Every day that something new arrives, I'm like a little kid. I run out, I want to sit in it for 30 minutes. I'm going to do my work from the car because they're just all so special. When you think about the cars we're dealing in, I only buy what I love, and I only buy cars that I get excited about. And that's sort of our DNA of the business and the business model. And about 4 years ago, 3 years ago now, I got a call from a mutual client. He basically was interested in a few cars out of a collection in California. And he said, hey, I don't think I can make a deal, but I believe that I can introduce you to this gentleman and you can buy everything. I was like, cool, send me the list of cars and we'll see what's there. And about 2 days later, he sends me this list of cars and I am just shocked. It is probably one of the best composed of eccentric, unique, best color, vintage supercars that I've ever seen in one place in the US. And I was just extremely excited because it literally included the most unique and weirdest stuff, including a one-owner orange Lexus LFA Nürburgring, a two-owner black BMW M1, and if you know anything about M1s, I think they made two black cars, a red 959, a red Carrera GT, a blue Bugatti EB110, a Shelby Cobra, a 300 SL Gullwing, and on and on and on and on. Something like 31 or 32 cars in great spec and in incredible condition from what I was told. So I immediately start working on this list, and I'm sort of, building this business plan because this is a large undertaking. And at the time, we weren't where we are today. At any point today, we have probably 20 or 30 million in inventory. And at that point, we had probably $3 or $5 million in inventory. And this was going to be a huge undertaking for us because I had believed at the time the collection was probably worth around $8 to $10 million total. So I started, trying to research all the cars. I was Googling the VINs. I was doing as much research as I could find. And I had found that some of these cars were bought at auction, but many had never been shown or advertised or anything like that, which made me even more excited about this collection because it felt like everything was off the radar. So I immediately flew to California, and I was basically greeted from the owner, who was a very gentleman, sort of an older gentleman, sweet collector. I wouldn't say shy, but, reserved, and told me that he had started buying these cars about 8-10 years before this point. He met me at the Santa Monica airport, and we went into sort of the airport, and they have this whole area with all these hangars lined up. And we opened the door on this hangar, and there are all the cars. And they're parked there. And it's just sort of like something out of a movie. I mean, you wouldn't imagine it because all the cars just had great specs. He had a original Carrera RS that was white, and I believe it had blue graphics with the blue wheels. Next to that, there was a Jaguar XJ220 in green. It was like every car just got better and better. GT3 RS 4-liter in black with 1,000 miles. And it was just absolutely fantastic. I was drooling. I was excited. And I started to inspect the cars. Now, I was there, and imagine inspecting 31 cars is not an easy thing to do. So I'm trying to take photos, and I'm trying to, feel the edges if there's any paintwork and look down the side of the cars. And it appeared that, most of the cars were in really great condition. The one thing that concerned me that he was driving the cars, but they hadn't probably all been serviced, or, some of the cars needed service. There was one or two cars that actually needed to be finished, or there were the stages of restoration. So we started negotiating, and I think at first his expectations were way higher than what the market was. So I flew back to Miami, and I started putting together a presentation. And I spent probably 2 weeks on this presentation. I pulled all of the comps from around the world I could find. I pulled, I would say, inspections of other cars and sort of, comparing my notes with other cars and talking to other historians. I'm not a Porsche Carrera RS expert. I'm not a Shelby Mustang expert. I'm not, there's a lot of cars that I had no idea what I was talking about, but I had to compile all this information to show him that, his 300 SL Gullwing didn't have matching numbers, and this is when they changed the engine. So I had to compile everything, and I sent him a final presentation. And he basically said, hey, you should probably come back and let's talk about this in person. So over the next few months, I went back and forth from Miami to LA probably 2 or 3 times. And every time I was super excited. I felt very optimistic we were going to get a deal done. And every time I went back home with sort of my tail in between my legs. But I am a guy that doesn't give up. It's sort of the nature of our business. I sort of believe that if there's a will, there's a way. I really was excited about these cars, because they were just so unique. I knew, a black M1 could bring, potentially a big premium just because no one had ever seen one. There had never been one on the market. So I was excited about that. I was excited about the LFA Nürburgring specifically. I was excited about the 959. At that point, we had never owned one. And, today we've had 5 or 6, but, to own a 959 was super cool. And after all this time, we finally came up with a number that he was happy with, we were happy with. And, the reality was we were probably overpaying for many of these cars, but it sort of helped to just get the deal done. And at this point, I spoke with my partners and I said, okay, we're here. We're in the 23rd hour. I know we're probably paying 5% too much of what we should be paying as a dealer, but it's probably just worth it. Let's just close the deal and let's get this finished. I'll never forget the last trip I made to LA. We had his attorneys drafted all these documents. My attorneys reviewed it and went back and forth, and we were there and basically we're reviewing all the final documents. We're reviewing his titles. We're reviewing everything. And basically this deal is done. I'm already selling off some of the cars I didn't want. And, in my head, my gears are turning. I'm thinking about how we're going to market these cars. And I'm just so excited. He goes, great. Everything looks great. Let's plan to sign this, once you get back, but we have a deal. And we shake. And I fly back home, biggest smile on my face. I'm, calling the transport companies, I need 5 trucks and, we're going to move these cars and, we're going to do all these really exciting things marketing wise. And it's really going to help put Curated on the map even more than we were at that time. And we were still a young company at that time. So this was just marketing wise, this was going to be big for us. And I think I was also, I was excited. The EB110 was actually originally a green car. It was a metallic green, which is actually very rare for an EB110. So I was actually excited about, getting that back and stripping that down and going back to green. So there was sort of a story of each car that I was excited to sort of, fix each car. There was an incredible 550 Maranello that I had never seen one before. It was a metallic red, race seats, diamond stitched rear deck, Barchetta wheels, unique Cuyo interior with a Cuyo dash. I mean, this 550 Maranello had every single option you'd ever seen in your life. I was just super excited about that car. There was a lot of little stories that I was excited about. So I'm, on the plane, I get back to Miami. I'm just really excited to get these cars. And a few days go by, I send my executed agreement to him, and I don't hear anything. And another few days go by, and I start calling friends of his, and, is everything okay? Like, is something wrong? One of his friends calls me and he goes, hey man, hey John, deal's off. I'm like, what do you mean? Deal's off. Imagine between flights and legal and all these things, I probably had $20,000, $25,000 tied up into this. And I'm like, man, like the first thing that came to mind, I have a lot invested into this deal. Like, what do you mean the deal's off? Yeah, sorry. I was pretty pissed. I was pretty livid. There was nothing I could really do. He'd never actually executed the agreement. We did shake. I didn't transfer money. It wasn't like maybe argue in court that, if we had the agreement, I signed it, I wired him the money or something like that, or he sent me some. You could sort of argue that, but no, we didn't have a deal. I was devastated. I think I went home that day. I'm a workaholic. I went home at like 1. And just, for 2-3 days, it was like, of just realizing that I'd spent all this energy. I even didn't buy other cars for inventory because I sort of earmarked a certain amount of money, and it took me a while to recover. What I realized though is that sometimes deals that take so long or, have to be extended or there's all these complications, sometimes just don't work. And I've sort of learned from that now as an entrepreneur that it's great to be overly optimistic, but you also have to be realistic. And I going into this deal, I was so consumed with the fact of making the deal. I probably made some errors along the way of maybe offering too much or maybe being too giving in the deal. And maybe that's why he ended up just backing away. He said, okay, this is too easy. 3 months ago, I saw the new Broad Arrow Group was just launching their first auction in Monterey. And I immediately noticed there was a few cars that were familiar. Then I noticed that they were actually auctioning this entire collection, with the exception of the EB110 and the exception of a few other cars. I will have to say that I definitely gotten over it, not bitter at all. I think in retrospect, he probably did a little bit better over time by keeping some of the cars. Some of the cars, it probably didn't matter. There was a Jaguar E-Type. There was an old Rolls Silver Cloud convertible that was, I don't even think it was a real one. It was like a cut into a convertible. So some of the cars were probably dead even. But over time, 4 or 5 years, he probably did better. I mean, LFAs exploded. Carrera GTs exploded. 959s have done incredibly well. The EB110 have done incredibly well. So he probably did better in the long run. Maybe not everything, maybe not a Carrera RS. They actually probably came down in value over time. But I will say it was definitely funny to see, and I will forever know of the supercar collection I couldn't buy.
Car fires make for great videos, but very bad days for car owners, and I protect my cars from fire by having an element extinguisher in every one of them for every mile. I actually got my first one from Freddie a few years ago as we were shooting Car Trek 1, where a fire was a very real risk, but it's always important to be protected. Element fire extinguishers weigh less than 1/10 of what a traditional fire extinguisher weighs, and they discharge 5 times longer. They also make no mess, and they never expire. So it's worth picking up a few to have around the garage, your house, and of course, in your car. They've got a special bundle offer right now during the month of May for our VINwiki viewers, but it's always a good time to buy a couple of these to keep you, your car, and your home safe. So check them out now at the link in the description below.